I'm happy to introduce the first of several of our panels and presentations today. First, of course, including today, international security. And to start that off, we'll provide a small description and then carry off with descriptions on our presenters and then move forward with the panels. So moving forward, I would like to discuss our panel regarding international security. Facing a reality of increasingly complex security dilemmas, the world needs creative analyses and solutions from a new generation of leaders that see these issues in a new light. In the International Security panel of the Onero Institute Summit, we will hear from 3 student speakers, each of which had spoken and chosen a research topic critical to global and regional security. First, for this evening, we will be hearing from Josh Pope, a recent graduate of the Elliott School of International Affairs at the GW, as well as a former DP alum, discussing his temporary review of Taiwan's security posture as it deals with a changing era of cross-strait relations and shifting alignment of foreign powers. Later on this evening, we will discuss the rise of Europe's strategic autonomy with Ivana Darianse, a senior at GW, addressing its misconceptions, necessity, and feasibility in a world only just beginning to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, on Sunday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern, we will hear from Elliott Raymond, co-founder and executive director of the Onero Institute, as he shares his research on long-term considerations and challenges for connecting the West Bank and Gaza Strip based on evolving trends in both Israel and Palestinian territories. And now, without further ado, let's meet our first presenters of the night. Very happy to have Josh Pope and Max Kaplan on board. They've been alum and very important people within international affairs community, particularly in Taiwan, working on policies to that extent. So really happy to have them on board today. Be happy to first introduce Josh Pope, who'll be presenting tonight. Josh Pope is a recent graduate at the Elliott School of International Affairs at the George Washington University. He focuses on U.S. security and economic interests in the Indo-Pacific region, currently serves as the Asia contributor on the Delta Foreign Affairs newsletter. Josh is from Queens, New York, and enjoys getting involved with local politics in the city. His piece is titled A Contemporary Review of Taiwan's Security Posture, and will be published soon on the Onero website. Now moving forward with introduction of our discussant, Max Kaplan. Max Kaplan is an alumna of the year 2021 of the Elliott School of International Affairs with a major in international affairs, concentrations in Asia and international economics, and a minor in Chinese language and literature. His interests are the U.S.-China relationship and the intersection of domestic and international politics. He is currently a campaign manager on a local election in Connecticut. Good luck, Max. Now, if Josh Pope, if you would like to move forward with your presentation, I invite you to do so now.
Sure.
Good luck.
Thank you for the warm introduction. Now we're going to start sharing my screen. All right, so I will begin my presentation. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about Taiwan's security posture and how it's changed, especially within the last year. A lot has changed under the Tsai administration and the new Biden administration. It's important for us to continue looking at how the situation evolves because of the extremely volatile nature and very delicate situation. First, I'm going to give an introduction and a background on the situation, then talk about the emerging challenges that Taiwan is facing in this year and last, and talking about how it has been responding to those challenges strategically, and diving into one of the strategies, which is an expanded diplomacy. So first, I'd like to introduce the topic to everyone by providing a map, because this can be a rather confusing topic. The official name for China is the Republic of China, and it is on the mainland. Meanwhile, on Taiwan, we have the Republic of China, which is still the official name. However, during this presentation, I'll be referring to the Republic of China as China and to the Republic of China as Taiwan. Taiwan is located on an island about 100 miles off of the mainland of China across the Taiwan Strait. And as you can see here, the Republic of China, or China, officially claims Taiwan as a part of its territory. However, it's de facto an independent country, and it has its own democratic systems, its own currency, and has been existing so for decades. They also claim the South China Sea as well, as you can see with the 9-dash line towards the bottom of the map near the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And for this reason, there has been repeated threats from China to invade Taiwan and, in their words, reunite it with China. And I'd like to start off with a quote from Taiwanese Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-cheng. He says, "The regional situation is becoming more complex and precarious. Aside from posing threats of conventional military invasion and continuous war preparation, the PRC has imposed new security challenges on us, including usage of gray zone tactics, such as the intrusion and provocation by aerial and maritime assets by waging cognitive warfare and verbal intimidation, saber rattling, and initiating cyber attacks." So he's referring to, in the past year, there has been a massive upscale in incursions by the People's Liberation Army Air Force, which is China's Air Force, into Taiwan's airspace.
Josh, sorry to interrupt, but apparently it looks like your slides are frozen. Would you mind stopping sharing and trying to start sharing again?
No problem. Sorry about that. So yeah, sorry. This is the map that I was talking about. So as you can see here, the People's Republic of China here is on the mainland, while the Republic of China is on Taiwan. Yeah, sorry about that. This is the map I was referring to. So the Taiwan Strait is about 100 miles across at its shortest. And then this is the map showing the territorial claims of China. So as you can see here, this is the 9-dash line that I was talking about along the bottom here, where they're claiming not just Taiwan, but also the water south of it as well. Here's the quote that I had just read out. And what the defense minister here is talking about is the aerial invasion, the aerial interceptions into Taiwanese airspace. So if I go back to the map here, you can see that China has been carrying out repeated Air Force exercises into Taiwan's airspace, and this causes issues as it forces Taiwanese Air Force pilots to rapidly respond to the much larger Air Force that China maintains. And it causes a lot of fatigue, and it's actually very expensive to Taiwanese military. Although this is not something that is a direct threat to the safety of the people of Taiwan, it's something that shows or represents what China could do in the case of an invasion. It also is supposed to wear out and demoralize Taiwan's government, the army, and the people as well. They have also engaged in cyber warfare through cyber crimes such as theft, denial of access, or ransomware. And they've also engaged in propaganda campaigns where during Taiwanese elections, during local elections, they have spread misinformation and have tried to push agendas that would benefit their cause. And they have blocked a lot of international action by Taiwan. Taiwan has repeatedly tried to join international and global organizations such as the World Health Organization, most notably within the last year, and it has been blocked by China, as China has used its global and international influence, its economic, security, and diplomatic prowess in order to influence other countries and stop these international organizations from allowing Taiwan to join. Recently, the verbal threats towards Taiwan has been built up as well. For example, Chairman Xi Jinping has made it clear that he's willing to use force to unify Taiwan with the mainland. He has said that this is something that is not off the table, and a peaceful resolution of this conflict is becoming less and less likely as more and more young Taiwanese people resolute with a strong Taiwanese identity. This can be seen in the recent elections where the more progressive Taiwanese identity embracing party, the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party, has won the last 2 elections. And move on to the next one. I would just like to kind of give a visual image of the difference in security and the reality between mainland China and Taiwan. So here you can see a difference of the naval capabilities between China and Taiwan. So you can see that it's just not on par at all. If you look at ground forces, naval forces, and combat aircraft, it seems that Taiwan doesn't really stand a chance against China, and that it doesn't make sense. Why doesn't China just, invade Taiwan? How does Taiwan stand a chance? Why would it spend so much money on trying to protect itself when it could try and negotiate some sort of peaceful resolution with China? And Taiwan historically has tried to respond to this imbalance by building up its military, by buying expensive military equipment, by trying to get more advanced aircraft, by trying to get a larger size of personnel recruited. They want to try, this is why there's a mandatory military service in Taiwan, which, although has been scaled back in the past, was a sort of strategy for Taiwan to be able to match China's. But the population, economy, and security difference between Taiwan and China is just too large to match. So this is why the Tsai administration in 2017 released a new strategy. Some points of the strategy, the basic points of the strategy going back is safeguarding national sovereignty and the value of democracy and freedom. So the ROC armed forces plan to safeguard the integrity of Taiwan's national sovereignty and make sure that they can, ensure the continuation of the state. They also want to shape a secure environment without threat, so that way they aren't always on edge and aren't always have to be planning for an immediate invasion from China. And being the guardian of national survival and development is one of the strategies that the ROC military would like to put forward. This includes integrating civilian and military defense technology and capabilities in order to not only push more advanced defense capabilities, but also to push more economic development within the island as well. And Taiwan has recently been embracing the idea of maintaining peace and stability within the Indo-Pacific region as a whole, rather than just looking at the cross-strait conflict for its immediate survival. Actually, in the Constitution of Taiwan, they stipulate that the national defense of the Republic of China is the objective of safeguarding national security and the preservation of world peace. So they are realizing this in their constitution through action and realizing that they do have a stake in Indo-Pacific matters as a whole. So the overall defense concept is something that was brought up by the Taiwan administration in 2017, and it acknowledged the realities that Taiwan faced, a much larger and more capable adversary situated roughly 100 miles away, and therefore emphasizing a focus on innovative asymmetric capabilities. Asymmetric meaning that although they cannot reach the par of China, there are strategies that they can use in order to deter invasion, essentially making the invasion as difficult as possible. People call this the porcupine strategy or the sea urchin strategy, basically saying that although you and a porcupine, maybe you wouldn't be able, porcupine wouldn't really have much of a match against you, you wouldn't want to try and poke it or mess with it because it's going to hurt a lot. So they emphasize on multi-domain deterrence. And this is done through three main strategies, 3 steps, I guess you could say. That's protecting ROC forces, so Taiwanese forces, making sure that they can continue defending the homeland, developing battle capabilities in Taiwan's littoral zone, which are the coastal waters, which you can see in the picture right here. And finally, developing the capability to defend PRC forces, or to defeat PRC forces on Taiwan's landing beaches. So this, kind of ties into the second point. Missiles which could target the People's Liberation Army Air Force, and cruise missiles, sea mines, and these kinds of military weapon systems would complicate any sort of amphibious invasion which would be necessary in order to invade Taiwan. For example, Taiwan purchased the 240 FIM-92 Stringer missiles from the United States in 2019, 2 years after the strategy began, and adding to its stockpile of over 2,000. And this, rather than expensive jets or expensive other types of equipment, might be actually more effective in deterring a Chinese invasion. Meanwhile, Taiwan has been investing in domestic arms. The National Chongshan Institute for Scientific Technology has been working on developing new types of shallow and deep water sea mines. The emergence of Taiwan's domestic arms production capabilities fills the demand for lower cost, more defensive weapons that cannot be purchased from the United States, simply because the United States arms industry is fulfilling different needs than that of Taiwan. The United States is usually producing more offensive capability weapons that are much more expensive and designed to project power over a large area, while Taiwan needs things that are more low cost, something that's more defensive in nature. And the limited relationship that Taiwan has with other countries around the world means that it cannot easily obtain arms from other arms producers. So developing a domestic system is extremely important. The Taiwan administration has had lots of achievements and challenges in developing in hardening its national security. For example, remarkable acquisition of weapons. Under the Trump administration and Biden administration, the Taiwan administration has been able to obtain lots of new aircraft, missiles, and defense technology that they actually had struggled to agree on before. They've accelerated the upgrading of operational capabilities, meaning that they're actually able to use a lot of this equipment more effectively. And that comes with high-level military visits from the United States. The transformation of the military service system. There's a goal right now to transfer to an all-voluntary force because there has been a systemic problem where a lot of Taiwanese people, especially the youth, have felt disillusioned from defending Taiwan. And they've had the problem of retaining people once they had this voluntary deployment. Providing more benefits and providing more incentives to people to join and stay within the Taiwanese military is a part of the strategy. And domestically produced aircraft and naval vessel programs have immensely taken off since 2016 because of the new administration. And it's going to be vital to maintaining Taiwan's security, but also responding more quickly to changing scenarios. Challenges include absence of a formal relationship with countries and a membership in international organizations. So Taiwan isn't really able to participate in as many international security exercises or have as many direct negotiations with even countries like the United States and Japan due to its informal status with those countries. Maintaining a sizable reserve force, like I said before, is still a challenge. And obtaining more diversified weapon systems because its sources right now are limited to the United States and domestic production. So we want to look at expanding strategic cooperation. Taiwan is located at a critical geostrategic point in the West Pacific and continues to strengthen their strategic cooperation with the international community. So in the first map here, I have an image of what are the two island chains. And this is the way that the United States especially looks at security in Asia. So as you all know, I'm pretty sure, China and the United States have been having a bit more of a tough time dealing with each other, and the likelihood of a conflict in East Asia or the Indo-Pacific region is increasing significantly. So the way that the United States looks at deterring any conflict with China is maintaining dominance over the island chains. And this is a way of containing any conflict within China. So as you can see, from the south of Japan to Taiwan to the Philippines is the first island chain. It's labeled right there next to Taiwan. And the first island chain is a way of keeping any sort of supplies or military channels of reaching mainland China. And the second island chain consists of Japanese islands and the US island of Guam and goes further out into the Pacific Ocean. And Taiwan is an integral part of the first island chain. Right now, the United States maintains dominance over the first island chain. However, if Taiwan were to fall to China, this would be a significant security risk, not to just to the United States, but to countries like Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. Because as you can see, a lot of trade actually flows through this region. For example, this is a map of liquefied natural gas flows. Much of it flows through the first island chain. And if China were able to maintain control over this, they would be able to use this to blockade Japan from receiving resources or blockade Korea from receiving resources, and could complicate any security complications with North Korea or with any other powers in the region. And then on that note, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the US-Taiwan defense relationship. So it's based off of the Taiwan Relations Act and the 6 assurances that have been provided by the United States under President Reagan. And these 6 assurances are: the United States has not agreed to set a date to ending arms sales with Taiwan. So the United States is committed to helping Taiwan defend itself, not by necessarily promising to defend Taiwan in the case of an invasion, but actually selling Taiwan weapons so that way it has the capabilities to defend itself. And this is something that has maintained consistency over the past several decades. I'll quickly go to the next slide here to show you. So this is notified Taiwan arms sales from 1990 to 2012, and as you can see, it's mostly consistent and much of an upward trend actually in this is in cost, of course, of sales to Taiwan, and this happens as the United States sells more expensive and more complicated equipment to Taiwan. And this has actually been updated last month, so this is up to date. The United States has not agreed to consult with the PRC on arms sales with Taiwan. China has repeatedly pushed the United States to end arms sales to Taiwan, seeing it as something that is illegal and violates the national sovereignty of China. And the United States has promised that they will not talk about this issue with the PRC. Number three is that the United States will not play a mediation role between Taipei and Beijing. So this means that they will never be in a situation where they feel that they have to coerce or push Taiwan to rejoining the mainland. And this really goes against a lot of things that other international affairs policy or security policy experts have been pushing, that maybe we could strike a sort of deal or power sharing agreement with China, and where we cede Taiwan to China, and in exchange we receive some sort of other concession from China in the Indo-Pacific region, and we have a power sharing framework. A lot of people push that sort of thought, but due to us, the State Department reiterating this countless times since it's been impacted, this is something that's extremely not likely to happen at all. The United States has not agreed to revise the Taiwan Relations Act. The United States has not altered its position regarding sovereignty over Taiwan. The United States will not exert pressure on Taiwan to enter negotiations with the PRC. All right. And I'd also like to talk about other defense partners, but actually before that, I'd like to say that the United States has upgraded other realms of security as well with Taiwan. They have upgraded their economic and political relationship, and they've done so in very subtle ways, such as having more government visits, bureaucratic visits to Taiwan, although there hasn't been a presidential presence in Taiwan for decades. Upgrading the level of bureaucrats or government officials that visit there show that the relationship is strengthening. And there have been talks about increasing trade relationship as well. And Taiwan is actually fully on board with this. They have been pushing for changing their trade policy, for example, trying to lift the ban on the imports of pork and beef, of American pork and beef, so that way that can give room for a trade deal, which could lead to more enhanced security, because part of the United States security strategy is maintaining a strong economy and improving the lives of those at home. Taiwan is also strategically important to the United States because it's extremely important in supply chains. And the most evident case here is the importance of semiconductors. Taiwan is the most advanced producer of semiconductors globally, and the United States, China as well, uses these semiconductors for countless things such as cars, smartphones, computers, and it's very important in the economic security of the United States. Taiwan is also important, just geostrategically, just to reiterate, due to its proximity to US allies such as Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. All right, and I'd just like to ask a quick question. If you guys could take a look at these two maps and just tell yourself, what's the difference between these two? The first map is actually a map from Japan's national security white paper in 2020, and the second map is the national security document in 2021. And the difference actually is the color of Taiwan. If you look closely, you can see that Taiwan is actually the color shade of pink in the first map, and in the second map, it's grayed out. And while this may seem like a very small difference, this shows that Japan is breaking from the one China policy that Japan and the United States has upheld for a long time, where they see and officially recognize Taiwan and China as just a part of one single China. Whether that be the government in Beijing or Taipei can be up for interpretation. But originally, what they have said was that we will recognize that there is only one China, and this is agreement that goes back to the one China policy that has been agreed upon between China and Taiwan. So this break shows that Japan is willing to actually upgrade its relationship with Taiwan. And the response from China, of course, was very negative. They said that Japan was meddling with its internal affairs and is actually acting very dangerous, showing that these simple actions such as this, like how you color Taiwan on the map, can lead to heightened security issues or even conflict. And even more surprising was this year, Japanese defense minister said that stabilizing the situation surrounding Taiwan is important for Japan's security and the stability of the international community. Therefore, it's necessary that we pay close attention to this situation with a sense of crisis more than ever before. So there's actually a growing movement among policy elites in Tokyo to advocate for Japan to legislate a law that's similar to the United States' Taiwan Relations Act, therefore establishing a clearer linkage between peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and Japan's own national security. And this comes at a time that Japan's developing its own national arms industry. They're starting to export to countries like the Philippines and other countries in Southeast Asia. They're starting to develop an industry that's actually competitive and can export to other countries. And this shows that this can really change the way that Taiwan acquires weapon systems. And furthermore, in the area of security corporations, which is considered more sensitive, Tokyo and Taipei have had exchanges of military personnel, senior military leaders by both countries, which allowed them to discuss and share security concerns. There's also been somewhat of an alignment between Japan and the United States on their views regarding Taiwan security. Earlier this year, Japan and the United States met for a 2+2 meeting. This was between Biden and Suga. And they actually issued a statement reiterating the two countries' shared interests in the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. So not only is this in line with the United States, this is also coming from a Japanese defense minister. And they said that Japan will be closely monitoring ties between China and Taiwan, as well as Chinese military activity, which is something that has been stated before in China and Japanese defense documents, but never has it been stated that their security is directly linked to that of Japan. And this hints that in the event of any sort of invasion of Taiwan, it would be within Japan's interest to see that Taiwan remains independent, remains a democratically independent country. So this implies that there is a possibility that Japan, alongside the United States, will intervene in a potential conflict. And I know I'm running low on time, so I will try and close this up. What's to come? Increased defense relationship with other countries in the Indo-Pacific region. Japan and the United States were just one example on how relationships are upgrading. The new southbound policy is a policy pushed by the Taiwan administration to increase relationships with other countries in Southeast Asia and South Asia. For example, India and Australia have also been increasing dialogue with Taiwan, and there is room for increased security cooperation as well. Increased investment in the domestic arms industry is much more likely to come, and this might actually happen with increased involvement with the United States and Japan, who are also increasing their cooperation on just the domestic arms industry in the Indo-Pacific region. An upgraded political relationship with the United States is feasible. This has been an upward trend since the beginning of the Trump administration, and I expect it to continue as well. And increased resiliency against gray zone threats such as cyber warfare and propaganda campaigns is something that the Taiwan administration has been incredibly effective against and will continue to develop. As you can see, for example, the appointment of a new minister of digital security, or a digital minister, which actually created plans for the government to actually combat this during elections. This included combating lots of messages that were being forwarded on social media apps, and coming up with creative digital solutions, and including the usage of technology in basic government and parliamentary policy to combat against diplomatic challenges that they face around the world, as well as domestic challenges as well. This digital minister was also responsible for helping Taiwan distribute resources as they combated the pandemic as well. So I'd like to end that here and turn it over to Felipe or Elliott, whoever's taking up the next part. Stop sharing here.
Thank you, Josh. That was an excellent, I think, summary of kind of the entire situation with regard to the security challenges around Taiwan and its importance to the region. Actually, could you pull back up the slide where there was a map showing liquefied natural gas trade? Because I wanted to highlight something on there that I think it's important to consider when we talk about why it is that China might be increasing in their threats towards Taiwan. So, liquefied natural gas, or LNGs, are one of the most important energy markets today, and they have been for about the past 15 years. Since the shale revolution in the US, and fracking has exploded all over the place. And it has brought the cost of natural gas and liquefied natural gas way down, which has led a lot of countries who are very coal dependent to start importing natural gas because it was actually cheaper than domestic coal production. China is one of those countries that has, in order to lessen its dependence on coal as it tries to be greener, has attempted to use more natural gas in concert with coal because it is significantly less worse for the environment. Not perfect, but better than coal. And most analysts project that based on the current kind of trends in the prices of natural gas and other renewables, that China will only increase its imports of LNGs as most of the shale in China, where you could produce natural gas, is actually under heavily populated areas already in the southeast. And to get that out would seriously disrupt and require essentially tearing out cities that are currently built on top of that. So I think that this is kind of just one angle as to why China has become increasingly anxious and increasingly, I'd say, belligerent towards Taiwan's status. Obviously, another reason I think is as you touched on, was the U.S.-China competition. China views Taiwan as as it is, a very closely aligned state to the U.S. And as our relationship with them sours, the fact that a region which they do claim as their own is so closely aligned with us, who is increasingly an adversary to them, obviously causes a lot of anxiety. And so I think looking at that motivation, we could really see kind of the direction things are going and why you see increasingly setting dates, more exercises, these sorts of activities from the Chinese government.
Yeah. And if we could just start talking about a few of the questions that I'd like to discuss. I'd like to talk about the overall defense concept. Although I didn't get to dive too deep into it, you guys get the basic idea. It's basically the porcupine strategy. Use cheaper, more defensive technology in order to make sure that Taiwan, it's as difficult as possible to invade Taiwan. Is the overall defense concept on its own a sound strategy to keep Taiwan safe? Does it have any holes or lackings that that doesn't really cover that the Ministry of National Security or the Ministry of Defense needs to keep in mind?
Yeah, so I think that I think as far as defense of Taiwan, I think they really have no other option but to engage in this sort of strategy, right? The population difference is pretty staggering between the mainland and Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan has between 20 and 30 million people. Mainland China has about 1.4 billion. So there's a pretty low ceiling as far as even if their economy was outputting the most that it possibly could, they could never hope to have the level of development that China has. They could never hope to have enough money to purchase as many things as China has. So their only option is a sort of asymmetric approach to defense. And I think I think there are obviously a lot of questions as to kind of how realistic is it that that they'll be able to cause enough discomfort to China as it attempts to invade that it essentially deters. I think this is where regional partners being involved and the U.S. being involved acts kind of in concert with their asymmetric strategy to provide deterrence. I think if Taiwan needs to maximize kind of what it can do as far as building up its defensive capabilities for that deterrence, and then only with that and Japan becoming increasingly interested and the U.S. Increasingly having Taiwan's back and selling them weapons, it will kind of all of these things work together.
Yeah, I think that does make a lot of sense. You know, part of the strategy is just kind of holding in until the Americans can come in, but a lot of critics would say that the Ministry of Defense's only problem isn't just the invasion of Taiwan. There are other issues that they need to worry about as well. For example, let's say China has a blockade, right? They blockade ships around Taiwan, or, you know, like the gray zone tactics that they're having right now, you know, sending airplanes over, you know, harassing a lot of the Taiwanese pilots. Responding to these challenges is going to be different than responding to an invasion, and it actually kind of falls outside of the realm of the overall defense concept. And this is kind of the reasoning, or to some people, the excuse that a lot of the senior military officials who don't agree with the overall defense concept use to defend big ticket purchases from the United States and more conventional military development. Do you think this is like something that is helpful to keep in mind, or it's something that's kind of harmful and keeps back the security of Taiwan?
No, I think you definitely have to keep this in mind. I think that another thing that we haven't even really spoken about, but is extremely relevant when you talk about, you know, Taiwan and Japan, is, you know, that there is a territorial dispute between Taiwan and Japan, just as there is between Japan and China. And while it seems like, you know, the overall interests of Japan have pushed it to draw closer to Taiwan, there is still a dispute there over the Diaoyu Islands or Senkaku Islands, depending on which side you ask. And so I think that kind of crucial to Taiwan's, you know, defense ministry, as well as its you know, its diplomatic efforts, is if it wants to engage in, you know, using regional partners such as Japan, or even perhaps later down the line the Philippines or Korea, in kind of its, you know, deterrence strategy against China, then it does need to resolve the issues that it currently has with them diplomatically and militarily, and there are issues that are there.
Yeah, I think that's a very important topic, and I know we're coming a little bit close on time here, but this does tie into the second point I wanted to get to, which is how Taiwan can expand beyond the United States, because all of the discussion about Taiwan has been this strategic triangle between the United States, China, and Taiwan, and, you know, the trilateral relationship. And, you know, it's actually kind of exciting to see Taiwan develop these relationships with other countries, and thinking about how how they're going to be able to develop this, not just in the political realm, but as well in the security realm as well. And it's actually interesting that you mentioned the Diaoyu Islands, which is what Taiwan refers to it still as, because although that is a technical dispute between Taiwan and Japan, they have kind of come to terms that this is something that they're going to have to swallow in order to develop a stronger relationship with Japan. And, you know, I think I'm going to guess that, you know, there were back-channel conversations or dialogue about this, because in the security document, or the security quad document that was released by Taiwan's Ministry of Defense this year, they actually referred to the Diaoyu Islands and said that they see any change in the possession of it as a threat to regional security. So this shows that although maybe they're not going to recognize it as the Senkaku Islands or recognize that it's rightfully Japan's, they do recognize that any transfer of its ownership is a threat to regional security. And the key to developing these partnerships is having a more regional mindset. In the past, Taiwan mainly had a mindset where, you know, it's it's mainland and Taiwan, and the security relationship between them and the United States. Now that this Indo-Pacific region concept that has been brought about and has been taken up by Japan, the United States, Australia, and India, this provides a huge framework for Taiwan to increase its relationships with these other countries and actually make these compromises. For example, in the past, a lot of people thought that India didn't care about issues in Southeast Asia or in East Asia, but it's actually committing 4 naval vessels over the next 2 years in order to patrol as well as engage in bilateral operations in the region. And a lot of this wouldn't have been feasible without the Indo-Pacific security concept. And the rise of this concept, as well as the DPP's innovative and ambitious security changes, diplomatic innovations, they are actually pushing the limit on what a lot of people thought was possible for Taiwan. For example, publishing a map and a security document that shows Taiwan is not a part of China. Slowly, brick by brick, taking this down and taking note of this is going to allow us to be able to see that Taiwan will develop more strong bilateral relationships with Japan and with other countries later on. So I think this is a pretty positive note for those rooting for Taiwan maintaining its democracy and independence. And I think we could wrap it up around, or if you have another note to say before we.
Yeah, I just wanted to give one last note on what you said. I think that you can't really understate the potential, I guess, importance of the Quad, that is the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India. In this, I think obviously it's still a relatively new group, and there are some tensions between some of the members on various issues. But I think that if Taiwan were to be expanding, in the region and in the region of East Asia, and then in the region broadly of the overall Indo-Pacific, the member states of the Quad would probably be the first to kind of be on that bandwagon, as the U.S. would likely be bringing them along. And so I think that, like you said, the diplomatic innovations of the DPP are going to be very important going forward.
Yeah. All right, and I'd just like to thank Max for participating as the expert discussant, talking about this issue, bringing up important points. Definitely has a lot of insight on big oil. And thank you to Elliott and Felipe and everyone else at Onero for putting this together and giving us a platform to discuss this, some exciting developments in international security and international diplomacy. And I'd just like to move it on back to them for the rest of the security. I'm excited to hear what the other presenters are going to say as well for the rest of the security panel.